All right. So staffing is one of the biggest costs in a medical practice and one of the most difficult to manage. And it all starts with hiring the right people. The interview process is very important. And so we asked several different practice managers in St. Louis what their favorite interview question was.
My favorite interview question is, what is your ideal job? And I ask that on phone screens before I ever bring anybody in the office. I will ask it several different ways if they are avoiding the question, because a lot of times they're not clear as to what they want in a, their next job or in their career. And by asking ideal, it's a way that you bring out what they really want. Because if an employee or a person doesn't know what they really want, it's hard to know if it's a good fit for the job. So that's my favorite question.
My favorite interview question is, what do you know about my company? Tell me something about it, and how do you think you fit into it? What skills do you have to fit into my company and the role you're applying for?
Nice. And what's your goal? What do you hope to learn from this?
Now, you can always train the skills that you need for that. You can't train them how to smile. You can't train their attitude. You can't train them to be a happy person when they come in. So you have to judge that when you're doing the interview process and ask them some leading questions. Now, how do you handle a cranky patient on the phone? How would you ask this question? How would you answer this question? That way you know how they're going to be when they're on the phone. When I interview somebody, I always do a phone interview first. If I can't understand them on the phone, neither can your patient.
Okay. I think my favorite interview question is, tell me about an experience that you had with a patient where they were unhappy and how you managed to deal with that situation. And what I'm hoping to find when I ask them this question is that they took the time to listen to the patient and find out what it was that they were upset about before trying to handle them or, get rid of them in a hurry. And I think the best thing that we can do for our patients is to listen to them. And we find that often patients aren't upset with us necessarily as they are with the situation. And being able to talk it out sometimes solves the problem, and it never has to come to me to solve.
All right, my favorite interview question is I like to ask the applicants if they had the money, education, training, didn't have to worry about anything, what would their ultimate dream job be? This gives me an idea about their creativity, if they can think outside the box, or if they're just very focused on what they want to do in their life.
My favorite interview question is, think about a situation that you were involved in where someone was very unhappy, and it may have been directed at you, or it was something that happened, but you were the one that was going to solve the problem. And tell me what steps you took to try and help this person with their situation. I like to ask this question because I feel that it makes them think about a situation they were involved in, and I can get an honest answer of how they're going to handle it in step-by-step method of what they would do to try and solve it for the person they're dealing with.
So my favorite interview question is, I explain to the person that I'm talking with that change always happens in healthcare. And so I ask them to explain to me a time when they either had a new idea or wanted to implement something different in the organization that they were with, how that worked, how they introduced it, how it worked, what was the outcome, and what were the lessons that they learned after doing that.
And what does that tell you about the person? What are you hoping to learn?
Well, first of all, I think it explains their thought process, or it helps me understand their thought process, and that they're not afraid of change, that they're not afraid to look at other options and decide what could be, potentially done.
Okay, my favorite interview question when I am looking at a new candidate, I always ask them, and it's usually the last question I ask, tell me about what the last book you read, and tell me about that book. What I find in many cases is it gives you a little insight into into their personality. For example, if it's a nonfiction or if it's a fiction, and a little bit, especially if sometimes I learn about a new book that I want to read too by asking the question.
My favorite interview question is, how do you typically deal with conflict?
Okay, and what do you hope to learn from that?
I hope to understand if conflict is something that an individual shies away from, or or if it's something that somebody deals with constructively.
My favorite interview question starts with, what is your favorite baseball team? And if they can pass that test, then we can continue with the interview. And from there, one of my very favorite questions is, when you think back in your career, what's the time you felt that you made such a great accomplishment to the success of your practice that you just want to tell everybody about it? That tells me what they take pride in. How they describe it will tell me if they focus on teamwork or independent action. If they answer it and it's a financial item, as in I saved $50,000, that tells me kind of where their brain goes. If they say we had unrest in the office and I was able to get everybody to work as a team, that tells me a little bit about the kind of person they will be managing people.